Okay. Ever been stuck in traffic, like totally gridlocked, and you glance up at one of those massive skyscrapers, and you just have to wonder, how do they even, like, inspect those things? Besides those scaffolding towers, which honestly kind of freak me out a little.
Yeah, I get it. Those things can seem a little precarious, but what's interesting is that we're seeing a real shift away from those traditional methods.
So less dangling hundreds of feet in the air. Tell me more. Is it the whole drone thing? It's like straight out of a sci-fi movie when I imagine it.
It's definitely got that futuristic vibe to it, but the tech is real and it's already having a big impact. Maybe a good place to start is just thinking about the sheer scale of inspections for these massive buildings. I mean, take the Empire State Building, for example. Iconic, sure, but can you imagine trying to keep that thing in tip-top shape? It's a monumental task.
Okay, yeah, I'm picturing King Kong, the whole bit. Not exactly a simple paint job. But seriously, just a routine checkup on something that size the logistics alone must be insane, let alone the cost, right? Yeah.
You're hitting all the right points. If we're talking old school methods, scaffolding, rope access, all that in inspection for a building that size, you're easily looking at upwards of $100,000. And that's not even factoring in the headaches of traffic disruptions, business interruptions, and of course the safety concerns.
Wow, $100,000. That's not exactly chump change. And yeah, those scaffolding platforms always make me nervous. All those workers up there, day after day.
And rightfully so. Those traditional methods, they come with inherent risks. There's a reason the safety regulations around scaffolding are so strict.
It's a scary thought, and it makes you realize that those regulations, as important as they are, they can't prevent everything. I keep thinking about that architect, Erica Tishman, who was tragically killed by falling debris a few years back. Just goes to show how critical those inspections really are.
Absolutely. That was a heartbreaking tragedy, and it really underscores the human cost when building maintenance fails. It's a stark reminder that we need to constantly be searching for safer, more effective approaches, and that brings us to this whole area of drone inspections.
Okay, so drones, obviously, less risky for the inspectors, which is fantastic. But I have to ask, are they really up to the task? Can they really match the trained eye of an experienced inspector who's actually, up close and personal with the building?
That's a question we get all the time. And it might surprise you to learn that drones might actually have a bit of an edge in some ways. We're not just talking about your run-of-the-mill drones here. This is high-tech stuff. We're talking sophisticated equipment, outfitted with incredibly high-resolution cameras, the kind that can pick up on details even a human eye could miss. They can zoom in from crazy angles and even use things like LiDAR and thermal imaging.
Okay, now you're just using fancy words to sound smart. LiDAR, thermal imaging, those sound a bit more sci-fi than just a drone with a camera.
Yeah.
For those of us who haven't quite gone full tech geek, what exactly are those things and how do they actually help, inspect a building?
Props. Fair enough. So, LiDAR. Think of it like radar, but instead of radio waves, it uses lasers. And what it does is it measures distances, but with such incredible precision that it creates these insanely detailed 3D maps. We're talking about being able to detect the tiniest structural issues, even slight shifts or deformations that might signal a much bigger problem down the line.
Whoa, so it's like giving the building X-ray vision checkup. That's pretty wild.
Exactly. And then you've got thermal imaging, which is a whole other ball game. Thermal imaging picks up on heat differences, and that can reveal things like water damage that's hidden, insulation problems, even electrical faults, stuff that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see with the naked eye, even if you were hanging off the side of the building yourself.
Okay, so now you've got these like eyes in the sky gathering all this data. But then what? Who sifts through all those images and figures out what it all means?
And that's where the human experts come in. They're still calling the shots, but now they've got this incredible toolkit at their disposal. Instead of just eyeballing it, they're analyzing all that data, comparing it to past inspections, using their knowledge and experience to decide what needs attention and what's totally normal.
So it's like augmented reality for building inspections, right?
Yeah.
Giving those inspectors superpowers. This is blowing my mind a little bit, but
Yeah.
okay, let's talk practicality for a second. We touched on cost earlier, but how much cheaper are we actually talking here? Is it a noticeable difference or just a drop in the bucket for these massive projects?
Oh, it's a big difference. We're talking, some reports say drone inspections can cut costs by as much as 40% compared to the old ways of doing things. Remember that $100,000 figure we threw out for a traditional skyscraper inspection? Imagine chopping that almost in half.
Okay, yeah, now you're talking my language. I can definitely see why building owners would be interested. But hold on, if we're talking about drones zipping around, taking thousands of high-resolution pictures in a single day, I mean, wouldn't it take forever to analyze all that? Wouldn't that kind of cancel out the time saved?
That's a really good point, and that's where it gets really interesting. See, the time saving isn't just about collecting the data, it's what you can do with it once you have it. You're talking about a complete digital record of everything, time-stamped, geotagged, a total history of the building's condition, and it's all easily shareable, archivable, and you can analyze it with software.
Okay, so no more of those dusty old filing cabinets stuffed with handwritten notes from inspections past. I can get behind that.
Exactly. And this is where things get really game-changing. Because with this level of data, building owners, they can go beyond just reacting to problems. Now they're talking about predictive maintenance.
Predictive maintenance. Okay, is that like having a crystal ball, but for buildings?
Yeah.
Predict when the concrete's going to crumble, that sort of thing.
Not quite magic, although I'll grant you it can feel like it sometimes. Basically, it's about identifying those areas that might become a problem later on, catching those tiny cracks before they turn into major headaches. So instead of getting slammed with an emergency repair, building owners can plan, budget, and stay ahead of the game.
So, to put it in simple terms, instead of suddenly needing a $10,000 scaffolding repair, it's more like, hey, let's budget in a $1,000 fix now because we caught it early. Makes sense to me. So we're talking safer, better for the building, and better for the bottom line. What's not to love, right?
Well, of course, any new technology comes with its own set of challenges. Like, how do you integrate these drone inspections into the way things are already done? How do you keep all that data secure? And then there's the whole evolving world of regulations, which is a whole other beast.
Yeah, the regulations. Can't forget about those. I imagine the FAA probably has a thing or two to say about a whole bunch of drones buzzing around our cities inspecting skyscrapers.
Yeah.
So what's the deal there? Is that even legal everywhere?
Oh, for sure. I can already see those tabloid headlines. Drone goes rogue, creates giant taco dip at a city hall. So really, though, what's the situation? Are we going to be constantly dodging drones, or is this all still pretty much in the experimental phase?
Well, it's definitely not a free-for-all in the skies yet.
Yeah.
The FAA has been trying to figure out all the rules for commercial drone use for a while now, and it seems like those regulations are always changing. But here's a curveball. Cities are actually kind of ahead of the game here. They see the potential, and they're really digging into how to make drone use safe and, not cause chaos in the streets below.
I guess that makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
Especially in a place like New York with all those skyscrapers packed in like sardines. Speaking of which, any news from the Big Apple on this? I feel like they have to be all over this. Oh, they are. The New York City Department of Buildings has actually been running a study on how they can make drone use for inspections a standard thing. And it's not just about the safety and efficiency stuff. They're also looking at how drones can help them make sure everyone's following those building codes.
Hold up. Really? Like, the drones are going to be the building police, making sure those landlords are fixing that leaky faucet?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
It really is remarkable, and it shows how this technology isn't just about replacing the old way of doing things. It's like opening up a whole new world of possibilities, getting information we couldn't before, and using it to make cities safer and honestly just run better.
So the next time I hear that little drone buzz while I'm walking downtown, it might not just be some kid messing around. It could be a drone inspector hard at work, right? This whole thing has been really interesting, gotta say. I feel like I've had a peek into the future, and it involves way less climbing around on scaffolding.
It's a pretty exciting glimpse of what's to come, for sure. And I think we're just getting started. As the technology gets even better and cheaper, who knows? Maybe drone inspections will be everywhere. Not just buildings, but bridges, those giant wind turbines, power lines, you name it.
Okay, last question. Maybe this is me getting a little carried away here, but could we ever see drones that go beyond just inspecting and actually fix stuff? Imagine like tiny little robot arms patching up cracks or whatever.
You know, it's funny you should say that. There are already companies working on drones that clean windows and even paint these massive skyscrapers. So adding a few repair skills to their repertoire, yeah, I wouldn't rule it out.
That's wild. Well, this deep dive has definitely changed how I think about those little buzzing machines. Who knew they were the future of keeping our cities running smoothly?
It really makes you appreciate how creative we can be in using technology to solve everyday problems, right?
For sure. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up our deep dive into the world of drone inspections. Hopefully this has given everyone listening something to think about, and maybe next time you see a drone flying around, you'll look at it a little differently.
Until next time.